Welcome to 1850 Main Street, a place where friends get together and talk about their country and hope for a brighter future. Your hosts have built this spot over the past 40 years, meeting every day with people who are in the headlines and behind the real stories.
David Zanotti and Rob Walgate are at the table today, asking the question, at what point in time do people in power have the right to weaponize the justice system against their opponents?
So one of the things we try to do here at 1850 Main Street is to keep a window open to be current on what's happening. So you can sort of feel like if you can't stop by the local pub to find out who the players are and what they're saying behind the scenes, well, maybe you could listen to 1850 and we can tell you some of the stuff that we're hearing from behind the scenes as to what's really going on in the news and why it's happening. But there's sometimes that I actually stop the process, and this is one of those times. Rob, you and I have talked about this at length, and we've talked with a bunch of people on our staff and our team at the American Policy Roundtable. We've been watching the series of trials that have come up in regards to Donald Trump over this past year, and we've been very quiet about it. Now, what really encourages me is that the people that listen to 1850 Main Street, as well as the listeners that we have at the Public Square and across all of the Public Square products, whether it's Christmas in America or Kids on the Square, whatever we might be doing, these folks are thoughtful. They are thoughtful. They're not driven back and forth by the winds of the media. They're not running around, in any form of panic. They're really thoughtful people. So I know that patience goes with that kind of thoughtfulness. So I've been delaying on talking about the Trump trial, particularly the New York trial, the whole Stormy Daniels cover-up, nonsensical headlines that have come at us nonstop, because I wanted to watch the process play out, because I knew there wasn't anything anybody was going to be able to do to stop that New York prosecutor, the state prosecution, and the state court and the state judge. They were going to do whatever they decided in New York to do. And that jury was going to do whatever that New York jury was going to do.
Yes.
It was set. I mean, the cake was baked.
It was, and especially when the fact that you had prosecutor run on that stance of what he was going to do. He was going to go after Donald Trump. He told you that from the beginning.
So he's elected, and his campaign was he's going after Trump.
Yes, even though the previous prosecutor declined to press charges when they did all their homework and all their research. But Donald Trump, being the polarizing figure that he is, this prosecutor knew they could go after him and get a conviction against him. And the one thing is, Dave, I'm still not sure anyone's explained to me what laws have particularly been broken in this process. That's been the difficult part.
Yeah. That's pretty sober and pretty serious stuff when you think that one through, Rob. And it's a cause for concern across the board. Now, you'll also notice that we're not about to take off on this jury either. We're not going to suddenly start, criticizing the 12 people, because trial by jury is a very big deal in our country. It is one of the most sacred treasures of a free people, is to be able to stand before a jury of your peers and make your case and make your defense. It's one of the heartbeats of the Republican form of government that we have in our country. And it also requires that there's an equal commitment on the part of the people to telling the truth. Because if people don't tell the truth, then courtrooms are a sham. And whether that's the plaintiff, whether that's the defendant, whether that's the judge, whether that's the jury, if people don't tell the truth, then they diminish the potential of the rule of law. Because the rule of law is based on the idea that we're going to have equal justice under the law, and that any 12 citizens in our country ought to know America well enough, ought to know the truth well enough, ought to know the difference between right and wrong well enough, that they can stand and judge their neighbor fairly. People all the time preach, judge not lest you be judged. Well, when you get to a courtroom, there's a whole lot of judging going on.
There is a lot of judging, and I do appreciate the form of government we have, the trial by jury. Now, many legal experts have said this conviction will be overturned on appeal. And I guess that's what I ask you, Dave, is the fact of, are we seeing criminal prosecutions be politicized around the country knowing that this first conviction will get the headlines regardless what happens on appeal. It's just about what happens first.
The headlines have all pointed out the historic nature of the convictions. Well, the historic nature is in the trial itself. We are talking not about a cartoon character here or a television celebrity. We're talking about a former president of the United States, a citizen of the state of New York, a business owner who was basically being prosecuted for business practices inside his corporation. And then that's as far as we can get with common understanding. And then the case starts to bifurcate and divide and go down lots of different paths. The case became so confusing. It was supposed to be about hush money. And a lot of times we love to be able to sort of, we call this retail, some of these highfalutin things that happen in the courts and in the news. We sort of consider ourselves the J.C. Penney of public policy. We want to take it down to the bargain basement where everybody can get a handle on it, not because people are stupid, but because people are busy. And a lot of people at the top of the food chain stop learning how to talk to people who work for a living. So we're trying to be the interpreters as to what's really going on. So when you take a look at this Trump trial in New York, it's very difficult to get to the basement on this, to understand what does it really mean? What was he charged of? What was the crime? How did New York construct the legal case against Donald Trump to move from a simple misdemeanor sort of accounting of crimes to suddenly this becoming a series of 34 felony offenses? And how that all hubbed together has to do with the court theory and the theory of the prosecution that what the Trump organization was actually doing was hiding a bigger intention, a criminal intention, behind the way they processed their paperwork. And the criminal intention, if I understand it correctly, was that they were attempting to influence the outcome of an election. And therefore, that made their activities unreported and illegal campaign contributions. Now, if you're having a hard time figuring that one out, so are a lot of really bright lawyers.
Yeah, connect those dots. And you have lawyers and prosecutors in many other states that are looking around saying, wow, I would have never touched this. You can't touch this. And had this been anyone except for the former president of the United States, this one wouldn't have been touched either. I'm willing to say that.
Oh, no, because they couldn't have come up with a hidden underlying crime that would amplify a non-felony offense into a felony offense. So now people on the left who are Trump haters are saying, well, these people should be praised for their legal creativity, their energy, their perseverance. Look at what they did. They really pulled one off and they got a conviction of a jury, unanimous conviction. They should be commended. Look, I wasn't in the courtroom and I did not watch the jury deliberations. And therefore, a person who's not been in the courtroom, not watched the jury, we have to be careful. We have to be careful because the legal system in this country is a treasure and we do not criticize it or politicize it. You can go just as far on politicization on the wrong side of this thing. But the basic fundamental legal questions are on the table and they are understandable. And there's a really good chance that all of this is going to be appealed at multiple levels. And there's probably at least a 50-50 chance from what we can analyze across the media that all of this will come tumbling down, but not till after the election.
Thanks for stopping by at 1850 Main Street. We're glad you're here. Do you want to learn more about what's really going on behind the scenes in public policy? Tune in to the Public Square on over 200 radio stations coast to coast, or download the free Public Square mobile app from your app store. Just look for The Lamppost. Find out what America's talking about at thepublicsquare.com.
So that leads a question, right?
Yeah.
So if it's illegal to pay hush money, to bring back in negative stories, to buy people off with NDAs so that they stop telling tales or telling the truth, whatever the case may be, it's irrelevant. It's the practices. It's done every day in business. Doesn't make it right, but it's done all the time. If that's not a big illegality, but it's a big illegality to do that if you're hoping to alter the intention of voters, what exactly is conducting a trial for the purpose of getting a set of felony charges proven guilty to influence the outcome of an election? What's that?
And there's one part of this trial that I've really struggled to wrap my head around as well. And I'll ask you the question is gag orders. I know that it's really going to come into play if they try and keep him under a gag order until after sentencing, because I believe a debate will have taken place by then. The constitutionality of a gag order, and as extensive as this gag order has been, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, and you're not alone, Rob. A lot of people don't get it. So there are a great number of threadbare moments in this case. This is not what we would call a shining moment in American jurisprudence or American politics. This is really fighting at the lowest common denominator. This is it's sad. It's never happened before in our country. And I'd like to believe that I would have the courage to call the same balls and strikes no matter who the candidate might be in a circumstance such as this one. I'd like to be able to believe that so that this doesn't come across, because it's not an attempt to vindicate Donald Trump. I wasn't in the courtroom. I don't know for sure. I do know I've read an awful lot about this, and I'm not a stranger to a courtroom, and neither are you, Rob. We're not strangers to law schools. We're not strangers to litigation. We've spent a long time in courtrooms with lawyers and in litigation. I mean, does any of this smell right to you?
No, it doesn't smell right. And again, it concerns me that, I love the United States and America. I love the 50 states and the District of Columbia that we have. But the thought that different prosecutors are playing under different rules in each and every state based upon what party you affiliate with causes me much concern. I've heard business owners say they were talking about expansion of their business. They will not go to a far left state now because they know, to the extent that someone may come after them, whether it be on the slightest of issue, they're worried about the criminalization of political party. And this is coming from an organization and from individuals. I mean, we say all the time how, we're not aligned, we're unaffiliated. We get just as much mails and emails sent to us regarding saying, oh, I can't believe you said that about Donald Trump, or I can't believe you didn't defend Donald Trump. And I don't think we said either of those things, but it's what people heard in the broadcast for some reason.
Yeah, and we're not trying to hike up our skirts and play holier than thou in this whole situation. I mean, the big story inside the bigger story in regards to what the hush money was about is, I mean, it's pathetic. I mean, whether it's true or false, none of us outside a courtroom, none of us can know for sure what actually happened there. But the very conversation of it, the whole thing is just wrong. It's just wrong. It's embarrassing. It's shameful. It's wrong. It shouldn't be a part of any of our lives. Okay, so we get that. There's no attempt to defend all of that stuff. We know that. But the question is much bigger than that. The question is, at what point in time do people in power have the right to weaponize the Justice Department against their opponents? And I want to make something real clear here that we need to all remember. This has been going on for a long time before Donald Trump came on the scene. The United States government, through the Justice Department, manipulated by progressives who are pro-abortion, have been prosecuting and persecuting the pro-life movement for decades. They have been trying to throw people in jail on RICO charges, strip them of their income, strip them of their rights, their First Amendment rights of free speech and religious expression and assembly, relentlessly, if they disagree. And it's still going on today. So now all of a sudden, this whole concept is suddenly in a much bigger spotlight. It's been going on for a long time. And it's one of the greatest troubling factors that we have in our country today.
And how does it get better? What can we do to make it better? Obviously, we talk about it. Obviously, we attempt to expose it.
Yep. I wish there was a short-term answer. I wish like we could say, oh, just turn to here, read page this, and oh, Rob, who can they give money to fix this? Right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, the pause was for dramatic effect. You're right. But the thing is, as well, we say it often, we didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. That's the reality. There's work to be done.
I will tell you, there's one thing that we need to do. We need to encourage any young person who's thinking about becoming a lawyer, who shares a biblical thought worldview, who understands a dedication to the Constitution, the Declaration, to be a lawyer. Now, I know 40 years ago, the idea was the last thing we needed in America was more lawyers. The thing we need most in America is historically relevant, well thought out, decent, honest lawyers and judges, because lawyers become judges.
I was talking to a pastor the other day, and we were talking about a young man that's in his late teens. And I said, I'm not sure. I think he'll either become a lawyer or a pastor. And that pastor looked at me and said, make sure he becomes both. Encourage him to be both. We need more of both.
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. We don't data mine anyone or sell your information. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.